Mr. President, I want to speak on these very strange days in Washington in this Congress, and this esteemed body's approval rating is at 9%, and I'm having a hard time finding the 9%. But it seems to me that the only thing that we're working hard on is whether we can get the approval rating to 0, and I think we seem to be going in that direction. We fight over political solutions that can't pass, and more importantly, won't solve this nation's grave problems. We fight for political points and mistakenly believe that the American people care who is up and down, or up or down, but they really don't. I didn't come to Washington for the purpose of playing games, taking names, or keeping score. That's not what I was sent here to do. That's not what the people of West Virginia want me to do. I came here to fix things and to be a part of a solution. I did not come here to worry about my next election or whether Republican or Democrats are up or down. I came here to do what I could to improve the life of the next generation. I, for one, am willing to sacrifice my next election so that the next generation can win. And if that means losing, so be it. And so, Mr. President, I rise today to speak about the next chapter of this sad state of affairs, which the American people are forced to witness. Whether or not we should extend and expand a payroll tax cut that will cost more than $240 billion in 1 year. Now, many accusations are being thrown back and forth to debate over the so-called tax cuts or tax increases, depending on which side of the fence you're on. There's one very, very basic fact that's missing from all of this very important conversation. Americans pay for one thing with our payroll tax. One, Social Security. Social Security isn't just another government program. It was established in 1935 to provide economic security for our nation's seniors who worked hard and earned their retirement benefits. They worked their whole lives to provide our generation and those that will follow with a better and greater America. Yet at the time when our nation faces the death spiral of debt, when we should be talking about how we can come together to fix a fiscal nightmare that will threaten the very programs we care about, like Social Security, instead we're talking about undermining the very foundation of our longest-standing retirement program. And right now, Social Security is on a collision course. By 2037, according to the trustees, if we don't do anything, benefits for everyone will have to be cut by 22%. 22%. And yet we're digging a deeper hole by destabilizing its funding with this recommendation. All in return for what? A temporary measure that has already cost nearly $120 billion and has, at best, created few, if any, jobs. In the real world, when policy doesn't work, you stop and try something else. Apparently, in Washington, you double down. Mr. President, why would we do this? Why would we double down on a policy that didn't work? The answer is simple. For the sake of a short-term political gain, leaders of both parties and the President are willing to fight over how we should pay for a failed program that jeopardizes the fundamental way that we pay for retirement security in this country. That doesn't make any sense to me, and it doesn't make any sense to the good people in West Virginia. Now, I know that in the coming days you're going to hear a lot of political talk about extending the payroll tax. And what they're saying sure sounds good. More money in your pocket. In fact, politicians will offer assurances that Social Security won't be hurt at all. My good friend that will be speaking also on this, Senator Kirk from Illinois, is going to show you a graph that basically shows that to be different. But what you won't hear them say, though, is that reducing payroll taxes, even temporarily, would take more than $240 billion out of Social Security's funding stream if we approve the President's proposal. And you certainly won't hear them say that the way they would repay those hundreds of billions of dollars is through our general revenue fund. And if we extend the cuts this year, what about the next year and the year after? When does it stop? When do we have the political will to finally say that we better start paying again for Social Security? Mr. President, our approval rating is at 9%, and we're rapidly losing the support of our family members. Just how many Americans really believe that Congress will make sure our general fund is solid enough to live up to the responsibility of funding Social Security? If the payroll tax cut is extended as it stands this year, the average family in West Virginia will pay $14 less per week. For a lot of people, that's a lot of money. But the few West Virginians who even realize that they're getting help say that they would gladly give that up in return for reliable Social Security safety net, or for real tax reform that cuts rates across the board and that ensures that every American, especially the wealthy, will start paying their fair share. They would gladly do that. Let me be clear, as a country, we can't expect that Social Security will remain secure if we keep telling Americans that we don't have to pay for it. And that is exactly the conclusion that people will reach if we keep reducing their contributions. Social Security is one of our highest priorities as a country, and we shouldn't let the federal government undermine Social Security by convincing Americans that they don't really have to pay for it. Then again, there are some in Washington who want you to believe that the very act of reducing your contributions to Social Security will spur job creation. Unfortunately, the reality is very different. We tried the payroll cut tax last year, and I supported it. But I will not double down on a failed policy, especially one that jeopardizes the future of Social Security. Truth be told, over the last year, I traveled more than 18,000 miles in my state. I've yet to find very many different West Virginians who even know they're even getting a discount, let alone business owners who say they will hire anybody if you give them a discount for 1 year. What business owners do tell me is what they want more than anything is some certainty and some confidence in this economy, that we will do the right thing and stabilize this economy. Instead, the president and leadership from both parties are trying to give them more of the same failed policies, taking steps that will further undermine our finances, worsen our debt crisis, and jeopardize hundreds of billions from Social Security's regular funding stream, all without the reality that it will create any jobs. And with this great nation now more than $15 trillion in debt, be $17 trillion next year, and going to $21 trillion by 2021. The enormity of this problem is just servicing the debt by 2021 will be greater than what we spend on our Department of Defense to secure this great nation. We can't afford to continue to double down on failed policies. As for taxes, don't get me wrong. I don't want to see Americans paying higher taxes. No way. I simply want a common sense tax system that ensures that everyone pays their fair share, especially the wealthy, who have benefited the most from these failed tax systems that we have right now. Real tax reform that will lower tax rates for everyone as we close the loopholes, credits and offsets, and allow some corporations and some Americans to avoid paying their fair share. It's time to stop all of that. Now, some will say that it's impossible, that it can't be done. I think they're wrong. It requires leadership from the White House to every corner of Congress, and it requires each and every one of us to be willing to sacrifice our political futures for the nation's future. I, for one, Mr. President, am willing to do just that. This is our moment. At this critical moment in our history, we must get our financial house in order, and letting Americans believe that we don't have to pay for Social Security is wrong. It is dead wrong. It is the wrong policy. It is wrong for our seniors. It is wrong for our future. And I will not vote for it, period, under any condition. For the sake of the next generation, we must get our fiscal house in order, and we can do that if we are willing to make difficult decisions. So, Mr. President, I will not vote for either of these proposals to extend the payroll tax cuts. Looking forward, for the sake of our nation, I hope that we will begin to work on a proposal that makes the hard decisions while also protecting the programs and commitments we value as a nation. For myself, and I believe many of my colleagues, and there is bipartisan path forward that can help save this nation, and I have my good colleague, a Republican from Illinois, who's going to speak on it also. The best path forward, I believe, is based on the framework and recommendations outlined in the Bowles-Simpson proposal. When those recommendations were laid out, a year ago today, this anniversary today, I had been a U.S. Senator for less than a month. Brand new, less than 1 month. But what I saw in that report gave me great hope. It gave me hope that we could identify our problems, which we did, the fiscal responsibility that we had, and willingly tackle them together. So I was on a high for that one short period. As a brand new member, I was so encouraged that such a responsible, bipartisan group of people put together by the President offered a no-holds-barred report on our fiscal situation and some pathways to fix it. then the proverbial air came out. Not only did the President and his administration walk away from these bipartisan proposals, but leadership in both chambers of Congress failed to pick up this report and run with it. Here we are a year later, and if anything, our problems are worse. We're going to be forced to make deeper cuts than we wanted to, all because of our leadership wouldn't confront the enormous problems we face with a comprehensive long-term solution. But the Bowles-Simpson plan is still the only proposal that enjoys strong bipartisan support. It started out as a bipartisan commission. It grew in numbers, and it's still growing. And it has a responsible manner to balance this problem that we have. And it's not perfect. No plan is. I do not agree with everything it proposes. But no plan can be everything to everyone. So with today being the one-year anniversary of the unveiling of that proposal, I am urging and will continue to urge our President and the leadership of both chambers to support any and all efforts, not only to pick up this report, but also to put their resources behind drafting and passing this legislation into law. I ask that we all remember the great opportunity we have before us to what is right. I don't want to be part of the first generation, Mr. President. I know that you don't want to be part, and my good friend from Illinois doesn't want to be part. The first generation that leaves this great nation in worse shape for the next generation. I don't think that any member of this Congress or our President wants to fail the next generation either.
I'll just grab it.
With that, I would like to turn over my time to my colleague and my friend.
Well, if I could engage the gentleman in a colloquy, this is a chart which shows the legislation that we're considering today. And what it does is it shows a tremendous hit to the tax that supports Social Security. This is the Old Age Survivors Disability Act. It's a $240 billion hit to the funding to support Social Security. We both are going to vote no on both pieces of legislation today because we don't think that seniors should take this level of hit. Now, in the Casey Reed legislation, this is where the so-called millionaire's tax comes in, and it only refunds what Social Security needs to the level of 7% in 2013. In fact, according to one analysis, we may trigger the end of the debt limit before the election if we pass this because of the $246 billion you will have to borrow temporarily until the long stretch of this revenue comes in. Now, we're about to do a chart with the Republican alternative, and it has the same long payout there and tremendous hit to Social Security. And in this time of all these political bills, I think Senator Manchin and I are both saying, let's not do the political thing anymore. We both voted for the payroll tax deduction legislation before because the country was in crisis and we wanted to try this out. But this is revenue that supports the benefits that Social Security recipients depend on. And we cannot continue to try to run this program without that revenue. And so I think that this holiday should end. I think that this revenue should not be foregone. I don't think seniors should be based on a trust us policy that will pay you back. And I would actually say even the political vote is to vote against this so that you're for Social Security and for making sure that this payment is continued. I commend the gentleman. I think we should exactly follow this policy of no on both of these because if you vote no, you are supporting Social Security. One other thing. I would ask AARP to speak more clearly on this issue. AARP currently told my staff that they are neutral on this. I would urge AARP members to contact AARP and say, defend Social Security revenues. Make sure that there is enough in the kitty for our benefits. We know that 10,000 Americans a day are now qualifying for Social Security. We know that this is an age of no free lunch. And so we want to make sure that the revenues are there, not just today, but tomorrow, because seniors absolutely depend on that. With that, I yield back to my colleague.
Senators sought recognition, unanimous consent to proceed to a colloquy, and did so without objection.
Thank you.
And let me just say this on my good friend from Illinois, that what he says is absolutely correct. We have so many people that are depending, and especially in West Virginia and Illinois, who depend on Social Security. And in fact, in West Virginia, 62% of the people that receive Social Security, it's their major funding mechanism. It's how they live day to day. And they've told me, don't touch our Social Security program, our core values of Social Security, what it does for us. If we pass this, not only do we touch it, we jeopardize its solvency in the long term. And if you believe that we're going to be responsible enough to pay for this in the 10 years outgoing, then we've got some beachfront property in West Virginia we'd love to interest you in.
And I would just say that this is a very long payout, both under the majority and minority piece of legislation. I'm hoping that enough members say no to both pieces of legislation so that we defend Social Security, and I commend the gentleman for raising the topic.
And I think our main thing is that we're very, very strong in support of the Bowles-Simpson, basically templates laid out. It's the only one that's been bipartisan. As you can say, it stayed bipartisan with both the senator and I, and it'll remain bipartisan. It has a tax reform that everyone pays their fair share. The very wealthy who have escaped paying because of the failed tax policies would now start paying if we had real tax reform, not increased rates, but just their fair share. That's what we ask, sir.
And with that, Mr. Chair, I will yield back and just commend the gentleman. We're hoping for 2 no votes because we think that those are the votes that support Social Security and its continued revenue.
And I want to thank the Bowles-Simpson committee and Mr. Bowles and Mr. Simpson for what they've done a year ago, bringing to our attention, bringing, I think, a pathway of fixing the financial problems that we're dealing with. And we are concerned about the next generation, sir, more so than our next election. It's what we were sent here to do. I thank you. And with that, I notice the absence of quorum.